In emergency management, the definition of a stakeholder is any person or entity with a vested interest in the survival or recovery of a given community.
This is the Stakeholder Prepping Podcast, where the tactical comes from the practical, and today, you become your own stakeholder.
Here are your hosts, Chris and AC.
Welcome back to Stakeholder Prepping, where you, yes, you are the stakeholder in your own survival. And AC, today's episode I'm super excited about.
No, of course you are, because it's an obligatory gun episode. That's why.
Of
So
course.
this is obligatory gun episode part 3, or trois in French terms. So
It is.
yeah.
I'll
So
take it.
I'll take it. I mean, but think about it. We've gone through quite a few episodes. We've only talked about guns 3 times, so I feel pretty good about that. We're not doing the Prepper Doomcast gun thing all the time. But today we're going to dig into something that kind of always sparks debate in the preparedness community, and that is shotguns, because they deserve a place in your gun safe. And they do differ mechanically from that semi-auto AR M4 type thing that everybody gravitates towards. And we're going to talk about what gauges mean and what they actually do. And then I think we'll probably finish off with our top 3 like we did in the handgun episode. And I want to note that I think people's skill level varies widely when it comes to firearms. A lot of people listen to us because they don't want to talk about guns all the time. And there are a lot of listeners of ours that are just total gun nuts. So it is a tightrope that we try to walk here, where we want to provide actionable info and, teach people things, even if you're a total pro. But at the same time, we don't want to get overly technical and down the gun rabbit holes for the novices. So ideally, and that goes with all of our episodes, I think, but ideally in these kinds of episodes, everybody has something they can take away from it. And Chris and I come at it from, different sides of the firearm spectrum, but I think we both do have quite a bit of knowledge. And along the lines of shotguns, Chris, I was just thinking about this, that because I get most of my gun information from Warner Brothers cartoons, when when you see the Daffy Duck or the Elmer Fudd shotgun, it's always got that big trumpeted, bugle end on it. Is that an actual thing that shotguns were like back in the day?
It used to be.
What,
So
what was the point of that?
that was because chokes didn't exist back then, but that was almost a carryover from the blunderbuss. So you had to be able to pack in powder and then pack in your wadding and then dump stuff in and pack it in as a shotgun. So it did 2 things. It, 1, allowed for easier loading, and then 2, it allowed for, or it was thought to allow for a wider, faster spread of the individual pellets, or in case of a blunderbuss, the pieces of lead or forks or whatever they could fit into them.
So it was actually to help with the spread. It kind of seems like whatever the opposite of a silencer is, it seems like that.
A loudener?
It's a loudener, 100%, but I've never seen one in real life. I mean, outside of the blunderbuss type thing, but I've never seen a shotgun in real life that looks like that. But I assume that idea came from somewhere. So maybe the 17 or 1800s original shotguns had that big trumpeted thing on the end. They look like a giant bugle.
Yeah, by the time we got to the 1840s or so, shotguns had, for the most part, lost that. There were still a couple of carryovers, but by the time we got into stagecoach days, people were shortening the barrels entirely in order to allow for a wider spread and just sawing off the barrel.
Yeah, the coach gun. I'm going to talk a little bit about that. I love me a coach gun. So do you want to start off kind of with the classic, Chris, safety stuff?
Yes. Safety first, people. This is your reminder. Safety first. Always follow your 4 rules of gun safety anytime you're handling a firearm. And we're talking about general info and personal opinions here. So keep in mind that laws vary by place. You need to check your local regulations. You need to get training. You need to stay trained. You always have to handle firearms responsibly. Just make sure that you're not putting yourself or loved ones in jeopardy because you want to go buy a new shotgun and learn how to use it. This is common sense. This is the type of, common sense gun laws I can support is make sure you know what you're doing with it. Finger off the trigger is your safety, but just be sure that you're following all local laws and regulations.
Yeah, absolutely. Keep your booger hook off the bang button until you're ready to blow something up. Um, So let's start with the big question, which is why a shotgun? For preppers, I think there are a few really solid reasons. Shotguns, they're flexible, so you've got birdshot for small game. In training, obviously, you've got buckshot for close defense and slugs for that longer range heavy hitter thing. Um, they're also often more acceptable in areas with stricter rifle rules or gun laws. But like Chris said, check the laws. We're not lawyers here. So, for listeners in foreign countries or states like California or New York, a, a shotgun may be actually a really solid go-to.
Absolutely. And 50 states wide, if you find a pump action with a 3-round magazine and one chamber, those are legal 50 states wide. I don't know about UK, Canada, etc. And I don't know about individual cities. They may have independent laws. But if you've got a 3-round pump shotgun, that's legal in 50 states. And they are robust and forgiving machines. A pump action or break action shotgun can keep running under dirt and abuse. And I've said it before, the rust, dust, mud, and blood. For many people, one shotgun can do several jobs. It can be your home defense, hunting, small load pest control, and they're pretty intuitive, but we'll kind of dismantle that no aiming myth required. That is a myth, and we'll get to that later for sure.
Yeah, we can talk about that a little bit. It's funny you mentioned like the UK. I don't know if I told you this. I actually went to a gun store in the UK last time I was there, which is crazy to think about because they really don't have like that kind of thing. But the double barrel shotguns are extremely popular for like their upland bird type hunting. But because they don't have a lot of guns and they're not crazy like us, their guns are just super ornate and amazing. I want to say the brand was a Wesley Richards. Have you ever heard of that?
Can't say that
Yeah,
I
I
have.
think it's a Wesley. Yeah, check them out. But this shotgun was probably a 25 or $30,000 shotgun, and it's all gold inlaid and ornate and amazing. Wood, everything and furniture, and that's kind of what they do. Their shotguns are really these pieces of artwork, um, because yeah, they don't have a lot like us, but they do hunt. Like hunting is a thing in the UK, and the double barrel shotgun is very popular, and they're just gorgeous. They have these just amazing, very ornate, very very expensive guns. Because yeah, unlike us, you're not going to own several hundred because that's crazy in some places. So you own one or two, and they're really really nice. And from a logistics standpoint regarding shotguns can use a widely available shot. Like the older model shotguns often come in very serviceable condition for super decent prices on the used market. So shotguns they're very versatile and they're inexpensive. And I think we're going to talk about some ways to add some force multipliers to your shotguns without buying more guns.
Absolutely. Let's start with gauges because people throw numbers around like gospel, and here's really the practical version, right? Gauge number is inversely proportional to bore size. So a 12 gauge is bigger than a 20, and a 410 isn't a gauge but a caliber. It's actually a 41 caliber. So in prepping practice, the most common to consider are 12, 20, and 410. You can find 16 and 28 and 10 gauge and even 8 gauge shotguns, but those have very niche uses. Um, the Elephant Slayer is the 10 gauge shotgun, and that will absolutely kill anything on the planet if you get a clean shot on it. But an 8 gauge, that's also called a punt gun, that you have to have it on the boat in order to pull the trigger, and the whole boat will go backwards. It was designed for taking out mass ducks and geese on the river or the lake.
That's crazy. Do you know where where that gauge comes from? Do you know where those numbers actually come from? It's like an 18th century lead thing.
It is. So where it came from, and let's start kind of with the history behind it. Um, but 12 gauge, 20 gauge, 410, it's all based on the size of the bore and how many balls of lead would fit down that bore to make up 1 pound of lead.
Right, it's a pound. So, like a 12 gauge, for example, is I think in practical purpose, it's like 62 caliber, and so 0.62 inches around, and it would take 12.62-inch round lead balls to make up 1 pound of lead. And same thing with like a 10 gauge. I don't know what size a 10 gauge is, but 10 of those balls is 1 pound of lead. And obviously that checks for everything except 410 because like you said, it's a caliber, it's not a gauge.
And 410, they are super fun and they're very, very versatile, but we'll touch on that in a bit. Do we want to go over kind of where our gauges sit, like 12, 20, and 410?
Yeah, so I'm going to talk mostly about 12 gauge. When I say shotgun, I just mean 12 gauge. Like it's got the biggest selection of loads and accessories. It's a great stopping power option. Slightly more recoil, obviously, it's the bigger one. Um, but you can mitigate that by modern stocks and shells. I think Chris is going to talk about that. 20 gauge is a close second, though. Lighter recoil, lighter gun weight. Still plenty of stopping power for many needs. Favorite for like the smaller framed shooters or people who are super sensitive to recoil. And there are a lot of those same load options and different cool accessories they want to talk about later that are available for 20 gauge as well. And then yeah, the 410 is kind of that rounds out our top three. That's lower recoil. It's limited by what it can do because it is smaller, but it's very useful for small game and training. It's got limited defense uses. Obviously, like the judge and the governor, like 410 revolvers. I take that's kind of my backpacking gun is a judge because you can literally like load it for bear. So there's some really cool rounds out there for the 410. It's a pretty decent self defense load, and then you can buy a 410 upper for your AR-10 platform semi-auto. So it fits on that same lower as a 308. So you could actually buy a 410 upper and a magazine that fits 410 loads and not have to buy another gun. And I think that's pretty cool. My buddy got one of those. It's pretty awesome. But the one thing, like all shotguns, is you've got to find the load that will actually cycle. And that's the biggest problem, I think, with semi-auto shotguns is you've just got to find that one that likes to cycle in that gun because they're just not created equal.
Yes, and a big part of that is the length of the shell and the height of the brass. So for we'll start with 12 gauge. Most commonly, you have three different lengths of shells. You have 2 3/4, 3 inch, and then 3.5 inch magnum. The 3.5 inch will accept the 3 and the 2 3/4, but a 2 3/4 will not fit a 3 inch shell in it without causing damage to the firearm or you. So you need to be sure that the round that you're dropping in there will actually fit into that chamber. And then, like you said about feeding, some shotguns really like high brass, where the brass goes almost all the way up to the midway point of the round. Some shotguns will only work with low brass, where it's just this little brass cap on a plastic tube, and that's your shell. So they can be finicky, but almost guaranteed a pump action or a brake action is not going to let you down. It's not going to have the same problems as anything that's semi-auto. Kind of a cool prepping tip. If you want one gun to cover hunting and defense, 12 gauge will give you the most versatility. If you or a family member or an older prepper or a younger prepper are going to carry it frequently, 20 gauge can be a perfect compromise between power and weight and handling.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. I have both. I've got 12 gauges and 20 gauges, and they both have a purpose. I think loads are where people get the most confused or do get very confused. So I want to kind of keep it simple for this. Let's kind of talk about the three. There's birdshot, buckshot, and slugs, and everything has its role. And I know there's these hybrid calibers. There's like buck and ball calibers, or there's those self-defense ones that have like some crazy hollow point slug with a pencil eraser in it and two discs flying behind it and stuff like that. But to keep it simple, let's say birdshot, buckshot, and slugs.
Yeah, we'll stay away from the exotics like the Dragon's Breath rounds. I know you like
Right.
fire, so
I love fire. And the bolo ones, have you seen those? I don't know if that actually works, but there's a round you can get for a 12 gauge. It's like two big balls of lead and they're connected by a steel cable.
yeah, I've seen tests on them and they just don't function the way that you would think they would. They just
Right.
make a mess out of things.
Yeah, that's kind of the way it seems, and probably highly inaccurate. I've never actually seen one in real life, but I've seen people selling them at the gun show. And yeah, there's all kinds of crazy exotic rounds you can get for a 12 gauge.
They also make self-defense non-lethal rounds that are full of little bitty rubber duckies. So
Oh, like a real
I
quack bang that does something.
exactly. But
That's
let's
awesome.
focus on our big three, which are birdshot, buckshot, and slugs. Um, let's start with birdshot. That's going to be lots of small pellets. It's good for birds and very small game because those small pellets have a greater density of coverage area over a wider range or wider spread. But for home defense, a lot of the time this is a poor choice. Pellets may not penetrate adequately through even clothing or barriers, and they can over penetrate in odd ways. So you kind of have to be aware of what you're doing. Buckshot is bigger pellets, which double aught buck or double zero is super common in 12 gauge. It's a very common home defense load because it balances spread and penetration. I will say from personal experience, double aught buck will go through 8 sheets of drywall and then through studs before it stops. So if one of those pellets misses because of a bad shot in a home defense situation, you need to be prepared that that single round, basically every time you fire a double aught buck 12 gauge, you're putting 8 9 millimeter rounds downrange at one time. And that it's a little bit slower, but you get the picture. One of those can go through all sorts of shit and continue into the street, and 8 of them at a time, yeah, you have several holes that you need to fix in your wall. And then you have slugs. Slugs are single heavy projectiles. They are good for distance, they are good for heavy penetration. They hit like a sledgehammer when you're hunting larger game, but they are relatively short range because of the weight. They need to be aimed and they behave like a big bullet is what you're firing, a big slow chunk of lead.
And then there are those specialized slugs, like the rifled slugs, the sabot slugs. I think the T is silent. And then for uh, rifled barrels, they're better for the slug accuracy. For the self defense or home defense in urban setting, it's good to pick loads that meet your goals but avoid glorifying that over penetration. Obviously, you can consult ballistics resources. You can get training. There's people that know what they're talking about that you can definitely consult at the range. A couple of self defense rounds I really like to talk about are the mini bucks, which are smaller than that typical 2 3/4 inch. They're tiny. I want to say they're an inch and 3/4, maybe, Chris. Is that what they are?
Believe they're an inch and a half
Maybe
or an
inch and a
inch
half.
and
They're
three
they're
quarter.
they're
Yeah, they're
tiny.
short.
This is a new thing in shotgun tech, and I think they're awesome because, like, in my Remington 870, that's a 7+1, meaning that it takes 7 in the tube magazine and has 1 in the chamber. Um, so it's an 8 round shotgun. If I load that with the mini bucks, I can put 12 in there. I can get 50% more rounds in that same shotgun. They're less recoil, they're less power, so you aren't going to go through multiple walls and hit your neighbors like Chris just talked about. And then there are the less than lethal rounds that are hugely popular and widely available in shotguns, especially 12 gauge. And this is something that I think can really come in handy, but I don't want to give any legal advice here because a less than lethal round can still kill you. Um, but there are a handful of different less than lethal rounds. Like Chris said, there's the one that's just full of rubber duckies. But there's rubber bullets. There's plastic balls like the ones like Lightspeed makes, and then there's beanbag rounds. So you can even get blank rounds that are very loud and have a big old flash of fire. You know, I love fire, and they can come in extremely handy just because they're very, very loud. So, I think people go both ways on this, Chris. I think there's a lot of people that are like, if you're pulling a gun, you don't want something less than lethal. But I think there are people that don't just want to go out and kill people and maybe do want to defend themselves. And I think there is a place for less than lethal in your loadout. There's certainly a place for that in government response, right? I mean, the police, National Guard, they still use less than lethal. There still is a place for it. So maybe there still is a place for that. I don't know how you feel about it.
When you talk about less than lethal, I think about the 40 millimeter Nerf balls that we used to shoot out of 203 grenade launchers at each other
Right.
to test them. Those hurt. Oh, that's it's a giant Nerf ball moving at Mach fuck, and it stings. And talking about the mini shells, you remember the KSG shotgun that John
Yeah.
Wick uses in the first movie? And
Yeah. It carries like 6 rounds in each tube or something, like a 12 round shotgun that dumps them out the back.
it's a 7+7+1. So it's got
Okay.
2 7 round tubes and then one in the chamber. But with the mini shells, you get 11+11+1 for 23 total. And then the KSG 25, you get 41 round capacity if you're using the mini shells.
That's insane. And they
It-
cycle okay in that, huh?
They do. I've played with the
Yeah.
KSG enough to know that it'll eat almost anything. It does not like certain types of slugs just because they wear out the recoil pad a little bit more. But great option. You just have to have the arm strength to hold up the shotgun to go through 41 rounds, and
Yeah,
that's
because you're holding the shotgun and 3 boxes of bullets.
exactly. And it's also worth mentioning a whole bunch of shot styles. So Foster, which is kind of your older slugs, Brennecke, and then modern Sabo slugs. Those are all commonly discussed when we're talking about shotgun round types or shotgun specifically slug types. But again, choose reliable factory ammunition from reputable manufacturers. Avoid the experimental reloading stuff, or the stuff that you're not sure if it's going to work. It's great to play with, but don't trust your life to that.
Yeah, that's a good one. It's funny because I see people selling like the reload ammo at the gun shows and stuff for like a little bit less money, and it's always some kind of fancy thing. Like, why would you do that? Just the shotgun shells just aren't that expensive. Just buy new good factory loads. But chokes are something else I think you want to talk about, Chris, because this is where that shotgun doesn't need to aim myth gets its first beat down. A choke is a constriction at the muzzle that controls the shot spread, right? So cylinder chokes give you the widest spread, full chokes give you the tightest. And if you're using buckshot or slugs, choke selection actually matters because for slugs, you generally do want that cylinder bore or rifle bore, but if you have a choke that is too constricting, you will blow that shotgun out and it'll look like that shotgun from the cartoons I watch where, you put your finger in the end of the barrel and it just blows right open like a daffodil, right?
I have seen a choke tube on the end of a shotgun turn it into a banana peel. And
Really?
it's terrifying when somebody brings one into the gun shop and you just see splinters of steel peeled back and it's like, are you sure you still have all of your fingers? Because you brought me a fan blade with a trigger. Um, but yeah, chokes are a great thing as long as they're used correctly. There's, five or six main ones um, that can shoot slugs, but if it's got one or two notches, it's gonna blow up with a sabot or a slug or really anything. It's just too tight of a bore to get that slug all the way through unrestricted. And you're talking about thousands of psi behind that round as it's trying to burn all the gunpowder and expand all that gas out. So
And when you talk about the notch, Chris, you're talking about if you look down the business end of the barrel when it's unloaded, you'll see little notches around the perimeter there of the barrel, and that will tell you how constricted it is. Is that right? So the less notches there you see, the more constricted it is.
correct. And every once in a while you'll find I actually have one 20 gauge, but it's a selecta choke. So the end of the barrel is finned and it has a little screw on the end that you can dial it from cylinder all the way down to full choke and anywhere in between. Um, Kind of a neat idea from the 60s. Didn't work all that well, but yeah, you have to be careful when you're using any type of choke with any type of slug. If you're using a birdshot or buckshot round, it's not going to make as big of a difference. You're definitely going to notice it on paper because you're going to have a lot different spread pattern. But slugs is where it becomes dangerous, and there are even muzzle brakes now that you can buy that will screw in to the end of a shotgun barrel just like a choke would, but it's a brake that mitigates recoil. I will tell you right now, if you try to use a saboed slug with one of those brakes, you are going to bleed because the plastic sabot will reflect off of that brake and come straight back at you. Don't try it. Bad idea.
Okay. Yeah, very interesting. Um, I wanted to chat about the chamber insert stuff. That's something that I really dig if you're okay with that. I want to talk about that a little bit cuz that's something I really think is a cool piece of gear to add a force multiplier to your shotgun without buying another firearm. So, I know Chris, you're familiar with these. I have a bunch. They can be dangerous. So when in doubt, obviously check with the gunsmith or the manufacturer. Um, but if you're thinking about these adapters, it's a very cool thing to basically, let's say you've got your one shotgun and you don't want to go through the background check again, or let's say Grandpop Pop left you one from World War I that you want to make a little more versatile or something. um, I think these are just such a versatile thing for anybody with a shotgun down, especially obviously like the break opens. That's really what it's meant for. But I own a ton of these. I use them often. Basically what this allows you to do is fire a huge variety of different rounds out of a shotgun. And this is only going to work, obviously, in these break open style shotguns, although there are a couple I'll talk about that they say work in a pump action shotgun. But these are basically long, so you have to be able to have access to the barrel to feed them down the barrel. And there's a couple options, and I want to talk about the ones that I've used personally. Chiapa, is it Chippewa? Chiapa? How do you say that?
I've always pronounced it as Chiapa.
Chiapa, like Arnold. You're talking about Arnold going to a helicopter.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Get to the Chiapa. Chiapa. Yeah. Got
Chiapa.
it. So Chiapa, get to the Chiapa. They make these great 7-inch adapters. They're a great name in the business. They make a great gun, and they make this Excalibur combo thing. They're about $45 each, and they have all the kind of standard pistol calibers. And yeah, like a 7-inch uh, actual rifled barrel adapter. So they are fairly accurate. And they're about $45 each. I think they make 8 different ones for the 12 gauge adapters. And they come in this really cool foldable pouch thing. That's a really cool one that I like. Another company is Gun Adapters, and we'll obviously post all these links on our blog on the website and for the blog for this episode. But this company, Gun Adapters, they have some rifled and some smooth bore options, and they have a 3-inch long one that they say will actually feed in a pump action shotgun. So you could actually turn your shotgun into a variety of different calibers. So you could load a 9mm or a 380 or 45 into these little rifled adapters. And they say that their 3-inch rifled adapter is about 1-inch accuracy at 10 yards or so. So that's like a 10 MOA accuracy. Not overly accurate, but it'll get the job done at close range.
Yeah, and 10 yards, I mean, that's closer than your average home invasion distance because
Right.
that's only 7. So as
Right.
long as you can hit that point of aim, you're still making an impact.
And then these guys, gun adapters, they also have some smooth bore options. So it's not rifled. You just put the bullet in there and it fires it. And I guess it just sort of like tumbles out the end of the barrel. But they're not insanely accurate when you start talking about smooth bore with a pistol caliber. But they're very cool. And one thing these guys do that I think is this absolutely amazing piece of tech for the, you know, post-apocalyptic Book of Eli world where guns don't work anymore. They have this cool product that is actually a 12 gauge to 209 muzzle loader adapter, where what this does is it basically turns your break open shotgun into a muzzle loader. This little $50 or $60 thing goes in the end of the shotgun. It takes a 209 shotgun primer, and then you have to use specific uh black powder with it. You can't use smokeless powder because it probably will blow up. But like you use 80 grains of black powder and you can turn any break open shotgun into a muzzle loader and shoot all kinds of weird stuff out the end of the barrel. So I just think that's kind of cool. I would like
That
to
is.
and I'll tell you I haven't tried that. I will be honest. I have not tried that, but I haven't seen any poor reviews online, but I just think that's awesome.
That would open you up for black rifle season without having to purchase another firearm.
Ooh, I didn't even think about that. You're right. You could actually hunt a black powder season with your break open shotgun, couldn't you?
Yeah, did I say black rifle? Black powder
Yeah,
rifle.
black powder. Yeah, you were thinking coffee probably. Um, but
Good stuff.
great stuff. Yeah. So we're not sponsored by them or anything. But yeah, I really like these chamber adapters for a couple of reasons. Like I said, um, if you don't want to buy another firearm and go through the process, if maybe you already own a shotgun that somebody's given you and you just want to add versatility, this really is the force multiplier for the shotgun. And the last brand I will talk about, and I've bought a couple of these, is this, I think it's Chazzel. It's CHASZEL.com. And I'll obviously put that link up, but these guys are amazing. They have these rifled inserts for a shotgun all the way up to 24 inches. And they have some crazy calibers. Like you can turn your 12 gauge shotgun into a 45-70 or a 450 Bushmaster or a 7.62 by 39. So all kinds of really cool stuff. And they get up to about $150 each. So it's almost like buying another break open shotgun at that point. But they don't require transfer or any paperwork. So this really is a force multiplier for your shotgun, and they're remarkably accurate. These ones have these O-rings, and you put these O-rings down on the groove of this insert, so it fits really snugly in the barrel, and it makes it a whole lot more accurate. And that just makes it slightly harder to remove, if that makes sense. But yeah, if you think about, you know, in some post-apocalyptic wasteland scenario, in the Book of Eli scenario, AR-15s are gone, man. As soon as you run out of gun oil, those things are gone, and you're going to have break open shotguns are going to live forever. They're going to have cocktail parties and wear their monocles and be on top of the world because they just don't break.
Break action shotguns and bolt action rifles. They do make
Yeah.
bolt action shotguns, and those are super fun.
They do,
Um,
yeah. I didn't know if you were going to talk about those at all, but yeah, for hunting, they do make bolt action rifled shotguns, which I hear are insanely accurate.
they're pretty accurate, but that also kind of adds to the beatdown on point and pull. You don't need to aim because in
Right.
reality, whether you're using a chamber insert with a single round in it or you're using, you know, double aught or triple aught buckshot for home defense, you still have to engage and hit your target. And typical engagement distance in a home defense or survival scenario, the FBI statistics say that most firearm engagements happen within 21 feet from you to the target. If somebody's trying to run down your hallway, 21 feet closes very, very quickly. And you you still want to hit the target. So you still have to be pointing it in the right direction. And shotguns increase your probability of hitting a target at very close range because they do spread, but that's not a substitute for sighting and understanding your natural point of aim and your trigger control. The shotgun still benefits from consistent sight picture and practice, and anybody who has shot skeet or trap will verify this. You have to kind of know where the pellets are going to be as the clay is getting to it. You have to lead your target. You have to aim in front of it. And aiming with bead sights, ghost rings, rails, plus an optic, that can be a real advantage. Same with a tactical light under the front of the barrel, but you still have to know what you're doing because the spread is not just some magic pill or magic potion. Pellet patterns are going to vary with the choke that you're using, the load size you're using, the distance to the target. You kind of have to treat the shotgun like a precision tool, which is what it is at whatever distance your load is designed for. Birdshot is going to spread very differently than buckshot. And you have to practice with your chosen load and your chokes and make sure that you understand how things are going to work in concert with each other.
Now, do you want to talk a little bit about some of the, I don't know, like the non-invasive accessories that you can add to the shotgun?
You're talking things like recoil pads, modern stocks
Yeah.
instead of a wood stock. Yeah.
Yeah.
Recoil pads, there are some that you can screw into the stock and just replace the manufacturer's OEM part. There are some that slip over. There are some that you replace the entire stock and it has buffer springs built in. Those are super, super nice for if you're going to be shooting all day. Ghost ring sights and red dots on shotguns, they're safe, they're practical upgrades to make a shotgun more manageable and effective. Um, but they're not going to be required. A ghost ring sight is just a big ring in the back and then a bead up front that's high visibility. So you know, you get a better idea of where you're aiming. More or less, it's adding a large ring aperture to the rear sight. It's giving you a rear sight so you can aim correctly. If we're looking at kind of the higher end stuff, we could look at prism sights. They're basically a crossover between a scope and a red dot. They can be magnified for example. The Vortex Spitfire is a 5x magnified optic. And the reason I like to bring up prisms is they don't require batteries, but they can still make you more accurate than you would be with an iron or ghost ring sights, especially if you're using one of AC's 24-inch rifled chamber adapters in 5.56 or 7.62 by 39 or whatever you've got. I actually I have an Israeli made prism sight on my competition AR, and it is phenomenal. Low light, no light, doesn't matter. It's picking up all kinds of ambient stuff. And then it's got a little bit of tritium in there. So in zero light conditions, it's still glowing.
Yeah, and prism sights, for anybody that doesn't know, it basically means it's an etched reticle, like that that reticle still works when the batteries die. So most of them, I think, still have, like yours has tritium, which is very nice. A lot of them still take batteries, so they will illuminate when you have batteries. But when you don't have batteries, they still work. And I actually really do like that because, again, that's just another prepper pace model thing that when your batteries fail, the gun still works and it's still just as accurate. Now, this is one of the key prepping arguments surrounding shotguns is that rifles are more complex, and they just are. And I want to break that down real quick is that whether you're talking about like the direct impingement or the gas piston systems, um, there's a lot of finely tuned and timed moving parts. There's the gas tube and the piston and the carrier and the buffer spring and all this kind of stuff that goes into like your AR-15 style rifle. Um, you get dirt in the gas system or a broken buffer spring that can cause all kinds of crazy malfunctions. If you happen to fire lead ammo down the barrel and you clog that little tiny teeny gas hole, then oops, that could cause issues for your 15. But if you had a chamber insert in a 12 gauge that shot 5.56, you can cram all kinds of weird rounds into that thing and it will fire every time. And just to give you an idea, the AR-15, and I just looked at one of my builds, it has at least 16 springs, including the buffer spring, the selector spring, the mag catch spring, on and on. I counted at least 16, and I bet fancier ones probably have more, and I bet, Chris, you could correct me. But a good break open shotgun might have 4 or 5 springs, and you could probably fire it with all of those broken except 1 or 2. So now I'm not picking on the AR here. It's the most popular rifle on the continent for a reason. I'm just saying if we're in a long-term grid down Book of Eli style apocalypse, the AR-15, they're going to be dead and gone, and shotguns are going to be the survivors.
I completely agree. And I think the only spring that you would absolutely have to have functioning is your hammer spring.
That's what I was thinking because I was looking at my break open. I was like, I bet you don't need the spring that ejects it. You can pull those out. You don't need the trigger return spring. You would just have to do it manually. I really think as long as the hammer spring worked, a break open shotgun would fire every time.
You don't technically need the latch spring to hold the barrels in place if you can force them into place too.
Sure. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Latch spring was the other one that was on my list of like the two. Yeah, you're right.
So, yeah, I think you're 100% right there. They're just going to work as long as the barrel stays in good condition and you don't run over it with a killdozer, you're
Right.
fine.
Yep.
But especially pump actions and brake actions, they're just mechanically simpler. Pump actions have a manually operated forend that cycles the action. There's not, you don't have to worry about a gas system getting clogged up. There's fewer timing sensitive parts. You don't have to worry about dwell time or blowback delay or uh, tuning your gas block to meet a suppressor requirement and then tuning it back when you pull the suppressor off. All great things about rifles, but shotguns are just simpler. And then when you get into brake actions, either single or double, or they even make now a 5-barrel brake action called the cat's paw. Um, that one's a little bit more complex, but a single or double barrel shotgun, it's 2 parts. And there's the hinge, the firing pin, and the extractor ejector. So simplicity means they're often more reliable when dirty. They're easier to field strip, fix with basic tools, and potentially jerry rig some spare parts for.
Right. Exactly. And we could talk about semi-auto shotguns too, and I just don't want to because then you're getting into an actual semi-auto firearm that is really just like all those other semi-auto firearms. But it's still generally simpler. But yeah, I think pump and break action shotguns is kind of the more maintainable, the better sidekick in your gun safe. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And would we look at semi-auto shotguns? There are some that have gas systems like direct blowback or gas impingement, piston systems even. There are some that just work on the inertial blowback too. And they're a little bit more complex. They're still not as complicated as any semi-auto rifle. Um, but in terms of precision parts and timing, they're definitely simpler. They are way more complicated to get a semi-auto shotgun to run than a pump action or break action.
Right. So you want to do a couple of these myths? There's a bunch of these shotgun myths. Let's do some rapid fire ones.
All right, hit me with it.
Okay.
So,
Myth 1. I think we already covered this, right? You don't need to aim a shotgun.
yeah, that's BS. If you're not aiming, you're taking out, the neighbor's kids while they're in their bed hanging out. Uh,
Right. So the other one, here's myth 2 is shotguns kick so hard only big strong men can shoot them. What do you think about that one?
Not with modern recoil mitigation. Pads, reduced recoil loads, stock geometry, inertia and recoil systems. Most adults can learn to handle a 12 or 20 gauge with practice as long as it's the appropriate load. You don't want to start off using slugs, work your way up to them. But recoil is absolutely not a challenge.
Sure. So myth 3, a shotgun is always better than a rifle.
No, they're completely different tools. A rifle, especially an AR style, because of the speed of the round, it has a lot flatter trajectory at distance. They're more modular, better magazine capacity, lighter weight per round, and they've got a ton of optics options. Shotguns are more versatile and mechanically simple, but you have to pick the right tool for the job. And good luck hitting a goose midair with an AR on one shot.
One thing I always tiptoe around this word that is AR style, and I think it's because I've been slaughtered by some, firearm gun nut crazy people. You're a pro and you use the word, but people do they give you hell online if you say the word AR style. I don't know why that is.
I think it's because of our modern society and global mass media referring to everything incorrectly, and we've just become accustomed to it. But an AR-15 is the most popular gun on this continent. And then you go into Europe and Asia, it's the AK-47. If you go down into Africa, you're looking at uh, HK G3 set me style rifles that are actual true battle rifles in 308. And then, I mean, you've got 22s are popular all across the world, and even the SKS, that's commonly misconstrued as an AR style weapon, and
Right?
it's
Yeah.
absolutely not.
Yeah. So I think we're talking about the same thing. But if you're okay saying the word AR style, then I am too. I'm wondering if any listeners are going to give us a hard time about that. But that AR-15 M4 type semi-automatic rifle. One more myth for you though. How about shotguns are illegal everywhere?
Absolutely not. Laws do vary in many places throughout the country and the world, but they treat shotguns very differently than rifles. That doesn't mean they're unrestricted. To purchase a new one, you still have to pass a federal background check. You still have to, you know, apply for license in some states. You still have to go through a background check in some states. So always verify your local statutes and consult legal counsel if you're unsure. But there are some models of shotguns that are 50 state legal, and then it just comes down to your county or city or parish.
Good call. Uh, Something else I want to talk about is some of the fun tech besides like the prism sights, which are a great addition to a shotgun. Obviously, lights and lasers. For most common shotguns, Streamlight makes like an integrated into the pump handle light, which makes it super easy to operate while you're still pumping the shotgun. Pretty cool. There's obviously like the barrel clamp mount lights and rail mount lights and things like that. One product that I wanted to bring up that I actually have on my Mossberg Shockwave, which is weird because it's got like a rail on top, even though you're not supposed to hold that thing up to your face. So that's just kind of funny. But but this really helps like with index shooting, which is kind of that instinctively pointing the gun where you think it needs to go type shooting. um there's a company, Beam Shot, that makes this triple beam laser that I just think is really cool. It's basically, think about three lasers that kind of make a triangle, and that diameter is adjusted to sort of a typical shotgun spread. So that three lasers make up this little triangle that's about 3 inches apart at 5 yards. And when you go all the way out to, say, like 40 yards, it's about a 25-inch triangle. And so it's very cool for that, not aiming the shotgun type thing, but being able to index shoot, or for close range where you can't hold that shotgun up, or something like uh, a pistol grip shotgun that isn't as easy to hold up to your face. This Beam Shot product is really cool, and I'll put a link to that. They're not cheap, but they're an awesome product. I've taken out and tested it, and they're right on.
I can see you specifically trying to clip one of those beam shots to your hat and like walking around the house without the lights on, pretending to be Predator
Oh
and
my
just
god, it does look just like the Predator thing. It does. The little Predator triangle. It looks just like that.
making your little click
Yeah.
sounds and the dog is going nuts.
Yeah, I can't do Predator. I don't even know what that noise was they used. Yeah, but yeah, you're exactly right. Yeah.
And it is important that you train and practice with the loads that you intend to use, regardless of all of the tech that you can have on a shotgun. You have to pattern your shotgun at different distances with buckshot and birdshot if you're using it for hunting and defense. Um, One of the key things that a lot of people don't work on is their reloads, and you can get dummy shells they're completely inert. They're just plastic. I have, I think, 10 of them, and they were $5 for five when I got them. But just sit and practice your reloads and getting them into the tube or getting them into the magazine. You also have to be up on your maintenance. No gun is indestructible, regardless of what they say. They said the M16 was self cleaning when it first came out. Yeah, in lab conditions, sure. But you have to keep the action and the barrel clean. You have to look at the extractor and the ejector, replace worn springs. If it's a semi auto, keep that gas system clean. Spare choke tubes in a small kit, check O-rings and threads if applicable. But again, if you're not mechanically confident, go to a trusted gunsmith and ask if they can teach you how to change out your own choke, how to take the shotgun apart. If you're buying one at the gun store, if it's a reputable gun store, they should be able to help you understand the basic maintenance needs of your new purchase.
And store them responsibly, people, like locked, secured, and in compliance with the law. And ammunition storage matters too. I think that's one that a lot of people don't think about, is they'll just leave ammunition everywhere haphazardly. And, it's affected by environmental factors just like a gun is. So keeping your powder dry, that old adage, it still rings true for your ammo. You know what I mean?
It does. And quick scenario question. If you can only own one long gun for a bug out bag, should it be a shotgun or an AR? What do you think?
Unfortunately, that really, it depends, because if you expect that close quarter defense, and general purpose hunting, a pump action 12 gauge or 20 gauge definitely has its value. But if you need that longer range precision and the modularity that you're going to get out of an AR, then that's just going to be better. So, like you had said, they're both different tools in the toolbox. They both have trade-offs. I'm not saying that a shotgun will do everything, or that a long gun or a semi-auto rifle will do everything. They all have their place.
I could not say that better myself. So I think this is the fun part, and this is what everybody has been listening to us blab on about shotguns for. Let's do our top three. Do we want to trade back and forth?
Yeah, absolutely, go for it. We're gonna run out of times, but yeah, let's go for it. What's your number one shotgun? If you can only have three shotguns left in the world, what would your number three be?
My number three would be the Mossberg 590 Shockwave, specifically in 20 gauge using number four turkey load shells. It's more than enough to take down any assailant, but it's not so over penetrating that it's going to go everywhere. And because it's smaller pellets, there's more of them, and I can increase that first hit probability. And it's a super, super short shotgun. So it's very, very lightweight and maneuverable.
And I have a shockwave, but why don't you tell people that don't know what that is? What is special about that shockwave?
So the Shockwave is kind of cool. It has a 14.5-inch barrel, and
That's illegal.
it's not for shotgun, believe it or not. Different guns have different laws. Have we been repeating ourselves the entire episode? But the Shockwave has what's called a bird's head grip. So it doesn't have a stock that you put up to your shoulder. You just grip it and rip it is what they told us when they were selling it to us in the gun shop. Um, it is designed to be fired from the hip or anywhere above, and it is a very, very manageable and manipulable firearm. It's great for quick turns, close quarters, and home defense.
Yeah, these are awesome. And I think Remington makes a similar version of their 870 with that, right?
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can't remember what they call it, but
I forget what they
Remington
call it,
has
but
it.
yeah. So speaking of Remington, that's kind of my number three. The Remington 870 that's the one you see in the back of every single police car. I mean, Remington 870 is the golden retriever of shotguns. It will never let you down. It will never leave you. There is a caveat that a lot of people say, and I think Chris, I've heard you say this too, that post 2007 when they merged with Marlin, they got a little shittier. Mine are all about 20 years old, so I I have a very good one. I love it. But specifically that Remington 870, it's the Marine Magnum, and go check this one out. It is the most corrosion resistant shotgun you'll ever see because it does this. They've got this electrolysis nickel plating system on every single metal part, and the even the inside of the barrel is nickel plated, so it's like the ultimate in rust resistance. The downside is it is a very shiny shotgun. You're not sneaking up on somebody with this thing. It's beautiful.
No, and trying to spray paint them camouflage doesn't work all that well because the spray paint doesn't even stick to it.
It doesn't stick to the nickel. No, the only thing you can do to that is wrap it. You could wrap that with like your camo tape type stuff would be the only way to do it. But man, if you're talking about a pump action shotgun that is going to survive in a salt air environment, I'll tell you a very quick story about this. When I first saw the Remington 870 Marine Magnum, when I was very young, we had taken like a class field trip to the Bangor Naval Station up in Washington State and got a tour of a new Trident submarine. And when you walk the little gangway up onto the submarine, there was a sailor standing there with this beautiful, bright nickel Remington 870 Marine Magnum. And I fell in love with the shotgun that day. I was like, that's it. That's the one. It just looks badass. And yeah, that's the one the Navy uses because it's super corrosion resistant because it's covered in nickel.
Yes. So let's go to number 2. I went
What do you got?
with kind of a hunting / tactical mix, but specifically the Stoeger M3K, not the M3000, but the M3K. The M3K is their competition model. It is a 12 gauge, super, super fast return semi-automatic. And the bolt is a lightweight, um, just incredibly fast bolt. It's the same blowback design that's used in the Benelli M4 combat shotguns, but it has an extended tube, so you get a higher round capacity. There is also a removable plug if you're going to be hunting with it and need that 3-round limit for hunting compliance. You just drop that into the tube and it blocks how many rounds you can load in, but they're very, very lightweight. They're super, super fast, and I use one for 3-gun competition.
Nice. Yeah, I was wondering if you were going to go semi-auto or not. So my middle child is also a Stoeger, but I'm going with their double defense. So it's an all blacked out coach gun. So like a cut down shotgun. It's like an 18.5-inch barrel, whatever the legal limit is. And they have them in a side by side or an over under. The biggest difference is that with the over under, you get 3 factory accessory rails. And I love accessories, man. Gear. I love gear. So you can on the over under Stoger. It's called the double defense. So it's all blacked out. It's all synthetic. It's not like this fancy wood furniture shotgun. But yeah, you can put like your prism sight on top and a laser on one side and a light on the other side, or even one of those fancy like Picatinny rail mount bayonets on it. So just a very versatile gun. And then obviously because it's a break open, I can use any of my chamber insert adapters in that. It's a fixed choke. You can't remove the choke from it. I don't think. I don't think you can. No. But it's just your typical coach gun. It's an awesome. It just looks cool too. It's just this very short, compact shotgun that's all blacked out with a bunch of accessory rails on it. But again, legal like everywhere because it's just a 2-shot semi-auto break open shotgun. But yeah, they're legal in a whole lot of places. I just really like it. So yeah, check out that Stoger double defense. Is just a very cool shotgun. The downside is they're very heavy. It's a beefy piece of metal.
They are. They're you're holding something that's got some heft to it.
Right. So number
So
one, last shotgun in the world. You have one shotgun for the end of days. What is it?
I had to go with an all-around survival gun. I had to go with the Springfield M6 Scout because it is a double barrel, but it's a 22 caliber double barrel over a 410 bore shotgun. It's basically uh, a replica of the M6 aircrew survival weapon that they used to pack into helicopters and ejection seats in Vietnam on.
So this
Um,
is a little cheating because you're going with it because it's not just a shotgun.
I yes and no.
I'm taking mine back. I'm putting a shotgun on top of a tank.
Those are called canister rounds and a 120 millimeter shotgun. But yeah, it's an 18 and a quarter inch barrel, as opposed to the original M6 14-inch barrel. But that's just to comply with National Firearms Act. And a lot of the later models have larger, oversized trigger guards and Picatinny rails for mounting optics, scopes, different flashlights, things like that. The thing I really like about it is it folds in half, so it's a very, very pack-friendly gun. But you do get the versatility of, depending on which model you go with, 22 long rifle, 22 Hornet, or 22 Magnum, all over a 410 bore shotgun barrel. And you can select which one you want to fire. It doesn't fire both of them at the same time.
Yeah, I have a Springfield M6 that is the 22 long rifle with the 410. I love it. Awesome gun. And I did. It's funny you say that about the trigger guard. I removed the trigger guard on mine because when it has that trigger guard, it doesn't fold all the way in half.
Yep.
So yeah, I had
Yep.
to take the trigger guard off of mine. But I love that. And the other thing is that I don't know about the 22 Hornet version, the 410 22 long rifle version that there's a bunch of rounds. I want to say at least maybe 15 rounds that are kept in the stock. The stock opens up and it reveals a whole bunch of little freedom seeds.
It is its own self-contained survival weapon. Yes.
Yeah, that's an awesome piece of gear. So mine, this is a weird one. I bet a lot of people haven't seen this, but um Charles Daly makes a triple threat, which is a 3-barreled break open shotgun, semi-auto, one trigger. But they have like an all blacked out one. Their synthetic stock one, and it's awesome. It's got 2 Picatinny rails from the factory. It's got 3 different choke setups, and that's what I kind of do like about this is that you can set up 3 different chokes. So whether your threat is getting closer to you, that spread is going to get smaller, or whether you're set up for that target, maybe you're hunting, is getting further away from you. Now that spread can get wider every time you pull the trigger. And I think that's really cool. And then you can take those chokes out, obviously, and use any of my chamber inserts. So for, an apocalyptic last gun ever, it's pretty cool. One thing is, and Chris, I don't know if there's a cheat code for this, but you never know which barrel is going to fire first in a 2 or 3 break open barrel thing, right? Like if you've got one that's loaded with a certain round and the other barrel is loaded with a certain round, you always want to make sure you test and know which one of those barrels is going to fire first, especially if you're firing different ammo out of it.
Yes, absolutely. And you will learn if you do go with a break action shotgun, you can learn the pattern and how to identify which one is going to go first, but it takes experience and not all shotguns are created equal. Some of them their natural firing order is top bottom, some of them it is bottom top, some of them it is left right, and others it is right left, and then you just have
Yeah.
to know your tools.
And no one's gonna read a manual, so you have to just go out and try it a bunch.
I
Like,
can't read.
I can't read RTFM. So, anyway, all right, well, we went over time, and I knew we were going to because 'cause we're talking about guns, but, uh yeah, we can wrap this up. I hope you liked this. Let us know. I would love to know what people's favorite shotguns are. I would love to know if you are listening, please send us an email at stakeholderprepping@gmail.com and let us know what your last ditch go to shotgun is. I would love to know. And I do want to say also, sidebar for anybody that's still listening, for any of our blog subscribers, we just realized like last week that our blog was not emailing out, which is crazy because we both subscribed to our own blog. And I just assumed maybe it went into the trash folder or something. But it was an issue with our provider for our website, and so I figured it out, and now I have to do those manually. So if you get a blog update, you will every week. I just have to do it manually. So if you subscribe to our blog, and that's pretty easy, go to stakeholderprepping.com, scroll all the way down to the bottom, you'll see a place where you can enter your email address. If you do that, then we will get your email, and we'll add you to the weekly blog, and you get exactly one email a week, and it's literally just the blog post for that episode. So for this episode, if you subscribe to our blog, then all the things we talked about, all those products that you were probably trying to scribble down, or the beam shot thing, or the different kind of chamber inserts and all that kind of stuff, we will provide you with links to all that stuff in the blog update. And I put a lot of work into the blog, so I hope people actually read it. I think still to this day, we get questions from people that are like, where do you list the stuff you talk about? Or people will say that, oh, I had to sit and pause it and take notes. You don't. We we list all of that stuff somewhere on our blog. You can go to our website, and our website is very easy because if you just Google stakeholder prepping, we're like the first 10 that you get on Google. Like we have very good search engine optimization on that stakeholder prepping, because they're just those two words don't find themselves together in nature very often, I guess.
No, we are the only ones. And with us doing it manually, it actually makes it a lot easier for you to send in a reply email. All you have to do is hit reply. You don't even have to remember our Gmail address. We will get it. So,
That's right.
final reminder, laws and safety do matter. Get training, check regulations, store your shotgun safely, and practice. And we will be back next week with, I'm super excited about our guest. I don't want to reveal anything, but I'm super stoked. But thank you for listening to us. And until next time, remember, you are your own stakeholder. We'll see you then.